recognizing their God or whatever through the oath or through their business. Basically, the Meiri says this Mishnah and the entire 6 pages of the Gemara in Avodah Zarah and many other sources of Chazal do not apply anymore. Why? It's not the same Christians. So Tosfot tried to deal with it nekudati, like point by point. The Meiri, Rabbi Menachem HaMeiri, end of 13th century, beginning of the 14th century in Perpignan, what we call today Provence. So basically he says does not apply anymore, which is tremendous change. And then he coins an expression, Gdurim bedarkei hadat, which means what? What's a gadur? From the word gader. They are fenced, they are protected with darkei hadat, which means even though their religion is not ours, still they have values and they have some kind of a moral code, which is something that we can rely on. And therefore, and we spoke about the perceptions that the Christians had on Jews and the Jews had on Christians, that we will be able to give them our animal to use, and we shouldn't be concerned that they are going to what? Not only Avodah Zarah, to have all sorts of bestialities. Okay, good. So those are the things that we had perceptions on them. He says maybe it was with the pagans, but not anymore, not in the end of the 13th century, 14th century in France. We don't do that. They don't do those things. Then, the Meiri continues on in Masechet Avodah Zarah Kaf Bet Amud Aleph. That's the second Meiri. The second Meiri really from the end of the page, and the second Meiri Bichlal. Mikol Makom, do you see Mikol Makom? Page, the second page, the second page, page number 2, and the second Meiri from the end of the page. Mikol Makom. Mem. Mem is Mikol Makom. It's also Mefaked Machlaka if you are in the army, and it's also Mikol Makom. And also, if you don't want to write too much, Mem is also Mar'e Mekomot. So obviously, it depends on the connotation. Okay. Also, it's like the same thing like with the Aramite. Well, Chamra can be Chamor, a donkey, or wine. So when you go to a restaurant in Babylon and you ask for Chamra and they bring you a donkey, you know that you are in the wrong place. You understand that, okay? So, Mikol Makom. Kol Makom sheyadua bevadai she'ein noagim bekach. So now he expanded and he extends his idea and he says, if you know that the common practice in that place, אף על פי שהם עובדי אלילים, mutar. Meaning, if you know that you are allowed to give them your animal to babysit or to work with, or you are allowed to do business with them, even if they are pagans. And why? Because this is something very interesting that we need to give a little bit of history. This is always fascinating to understand the relations between history, society, and religion. With every religion, but definitely with the Jewish religion. Most of our lives, as religious life, were outside of the land of Israel, under the control and the regime of what? Of Muslims or Christians at the beginning. Really until the 11th century, most Jews were where? In Babylon, Iran, Syria, in Kiruan, which is South Africa, those places. Mamash little Jews in Europe. We know, for example, the first Jews who came to England were when? With 1066, with the William the Conqueror, okay? So that's really at the middle Be'erech of the 11th century, and then they were expelled at 1290, but who cares? So that's Jews in England, and they came from where? Probably from Germany or Normandy, it depends. So there were some Jews in France, there were some Jews in Germany, there were some Jews in Sicilia, but most Jews lived under Muslim regime. Later on, when in Babel, Iran, Syria, then basically what's happened was that the Muslims became a bit different, and Jews start moving to Europe. Part of it was business. Some of them were invited by the kings because of their ability to do math and to make loans and banking, and obviously that they were merchants. and after they squeeze them, they expel them. Okay, so that's what you see obviously in England, you see in France in 1305, that they own in Spain in 1492. Okay, well, we all know the history. Oh, we don't, whatever. So the thing is what? Is that we need to understand also some changes in what we will call changes in the judicial system and in the governing system in Europe. We know, and not only from the Meiri, we know that there was somewhat of police in European countries. There was something that is a judicial system, and there was a law. Now, not necessarily a good one, a better one, a bad one, a fair one, but there was. And people who committed sins, I'm not talking about spiritual sins, I'm talking about sins. If you stole or adultery or you murdered someone, you will be brought to what? To court, and you will be judged. It's not hefker. Can you bribe the judge? Perhaps yes. Can everyone get the same judgment? Probably not. But there is what we call, and that's what the Meiri says, it's not paganism anymore. And religion does not stand on its own. There is what we will call the judicial system that basically balances. So you can be a pagan, but even if you are a pagan and you worship the cow in your house, if you murdered someone, you will be tried in a court, not a court of pagans, the court of people who learned how to be judges, whatever it is. Therefore, the Meiri says, back then in the Mishnah time, in the Tanaic time, 0th, 1st, 2nd century, and even in the Amoraic era, let's expand it to the 5th or the 6th century, religion and code of morality and justice and ethics were the same. If you are a pagan, you are a terrible person, and you will have bestiality, and I'm not going to give you my children to babysit, and I'm not going to to do business with you, nothing like that. Because religion and the justice was the same thing. When societies progressed and there is a judicial system, says the Meiri, I don't care so much about your faith and about your religion. I care about one thing. Are you a law-abiding citizen? And by the way, there are no choices. Okay? If you are being caught, gamarnu, you are going to be tried. Yes, Linda.
So in those times, though, there were the feudal systems in these places, which were not terribly just, and in which there were not these, courts of law that tried everybody in equal way. Does that affect the way in which we interact with the societies around us?
Good. As I mentioned before, it was not fair for everyone, but there was a law. It's not Isha Yashar Be'enav Yaseh, and people had to be careful. By the way, also in the religious arena, we know that the church will not tolerate adultery or it's cross religions. So the thing is that basically there was a corruption everywhere, but they will punish according to religious laws. So people there, I would put it like that. I think, and we know that, for example, when you know a little bit about pagans, and not only from the time of Abraham, you're talking about what? Sacrificing children. You're talking about bestiality. You're talking about disgusting things. Those things do not happen anymore. And the Meiri, in a way, is right. That just he had to have a tremendous courage to say what? Whatever was said was only for that era. Now, different era, different laws, which open up a Pandora box. Yes? End of the 13th century, beginning of the 14th century. Back then it's called Perpignan, now we call it Provence, South France. Okay.
The Meiri extend this to Hindus and Buddhists who are not monotheists?
So he says, Af al pi she'em ovdei elilim, even though, despite the fact that they are ovdei elilim, mamash idol worshippers, still they are gdurim bedarkei hadat, which is an incredible thing. Basically, he's making this divide between your faith and your behavior, which in the Mishnaic, in the Tanaic era, it didn't exist. So then he continues, וכבר התבהר שהדברים הללו נאמרו לאותם זמנים, שהיו אותם האומות מעובדי אלילים והיו מזוהמים במעשיהם. This is a very harsh language. What is מזוהם? Polluted, infected, meaning their behavior was inflicted and inflected and poisoned, like almost poisoned, with what? ומכוערים במידותיהם, כעניין האמור בקצת, כמעשה ארץ מצרים אשר ישבתם בה לא תעשו, וכמעשה ארץ כנען. When we went out from Egypt, we have this spectrum, right? כמעשה ארץ מצרים, what you saw in Egypt, don't do, and what they are about to do in Canaan, don't do it. Okay, so that's why we were in both places. And then it says, אבל שאר אומות, however, other nations, שהם גדורים בדרכי הדתות. Meaning there is some kind, I don't know to call it a Christian, Jewish, what do you call it? The Judeo-Christian moral code, or even Islam, to some extent. There is this understanding that there is some kind. Look, the 10 Commandments are basically universal. Yeah. Okay, I know some people have different interpretations to לא תרצח ולא תנאף, I understand, but basically most people agree with the 10 Commandments, and others too. So then he says, ושהם נקיים מכעורים שבמידות הללו. They are not holding those ugly behavior that their ancestors, the pagans, had, and then he says more, ואדרבה, שמענישים עליהם. They will punish people who behave in an immoral or unethical way according to the time. בסדר. אין ספק. By the way, I will just give you one application, which is an incredible one. When a Jewish woman was in prison, we assumed that she was not touched.
Why?
Because the law said, if you have a woman in prison, the guard cannot touch her, cannot sleep with her, cannot rape her. If he will be punished. So therefore, he will be afraid to do it. So then my assumption is that if that woman, even if she is a Cohen's wife, we will assume that she was not touched. This is karet, this is mamzerut, this is all sorts of questions, but because we believe that there is a law, we assume that she was not touched. This is unbelievable. אין ספק שאין לדברים הללו מקום להם כלל, כמו שבארנו, וכבר נכפה על זה הרבה בדברנו, we repeated that thing many times, כדי שלא תצטרך לכמה דחקים שאתה מוצא בחידושין ובתוספות ללא צורך. The Meiri is saying here something incredible. He says, I'm well aware, I'm end of the 13th century, beginning of the 14th century, I'm well aware of what Rabbeinu Tam said. Rabbeinu Tam was when? 12th century in France. Okay? And Rabbeinu Tam dealt with the issues that I'm dealing with, and he always found what? All sorts of leeways and leniencies and to make it okay to do business with them. He says, you don't need all of that, because I decided it's not applicable anymore. We are talking about, this is 2 centuries after Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam is 12th century, Meiri end of the 13th, beginning of the 14th century. Rabbeinu Tam is in North France. Okay, he died already, he's gone. Meiri never saw Rabbeinu Tam, but he read his writings and his Tosfot. And he says it's not applicable anymore. So you don't need to go to Tosfot to try to find the heter. There is no Isur. You understand the difference? It's huge. To say that there is a heter, it means what? There is still an Isur, but you know what? How can Jews do business and how can they survive? Blah, 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 blah. So I find a solution. When I say it does not exist, I don't need to find a solution. There's no problem. So that's the Meiri. Then one more Meiri. הרבה ראינו שמתפלאים, we saw many people that are like surprised, שבזמנים אלו אין אדם נזהר מדברים אלו כלל. It says we see some people that basically they came to the Meiri. You know the tzaddikim? You know the tzaddikim? The people are always more righteous than the rabbi. Do you know people like that? I know some. And they come to the rabbi, they come to the Meiri and says, Meiri, הרב המאירי, כבוד הרב, right? לפי דעתי, according to my opinion, I don't understand the Rav and I don't understand his halacha. How come that the Rav allows people to do business with non-Jews, and how come that the rabbi allowed to babysit, to get them as a babysitter to your children, and how the Rav does not know Masechet Avodah Zarah. So the Meiri says, "Ve'anu kvar bi'arnu." We already mentioned, we already explained it. עיקר כוונת הספר על איזו אומה היא סובבת, כמו שיעידו ימי עדיהן שהזכרנו, שהם כולם לאומות הקדומות שלא היו גדורות בדרכי הדותות. It says, everything that you're going to quote to me from Mishnah in Avodah Zarah and the Gemara, this is only apply on the pagans, the people who are terrible. שלא היו גדורים בדרכי הדתות, והם הדוקות ומתמידות בעבודת האלילים והכוכבים והתלזמיאש, שכל אלו וכיוצא בהם הם עיקרי עבודה זרה. Meaning, it talked only about people who were dedicated to paganism and to everything it basically entails. However, but now, not anymore. Today, we don't need to worry about it. However, there is always however. מכל מקום לעניין חשש איסור שבת וחשש איסור מאכלות ומשתאות כי יין נסך וסתם יינם ושאר איסורים הדומים לאלו, הן שנאסרו בהנאה, הן שנאסרו באכילה, הן מאותם שגזרו עליהם מחשש חתנות, I will translate in a minute, כל האומות שוות בו, חוץ מאיסור הנאה וסתם יינם לדעת רוב המפרשים, כמו שהתבאר במקומו במסכת זו. So he says, רגע. You can take what I said, the Meiri, and say, no intermarriage anymore. No problem of yain nesech. We can drink wine with them. They can open the wine for us. They can pull the wine for us. There is no problem to eat their food, right? Says the Meiri, no. Or, as someone else says, don't. Okay? And they did, right? So, what does that mean? He says, look, there are categories. When you talk about, and this is the core issue of our discussion, of this shiur and some other shiurim as well. When you talk about the core relationships between Jews and non-Jews, basically you are talking about different categories. You have one category, which we'll call behavior and perception on what they do, and some of it was not perception, some of it was mamish reality, okay? Then you have what we will call isur chatnut. You're not allowed to marry them, and you're not allowed to do things that will bring you closer to them. For example, wine, food, oil for a period of time, and then it was cancelled because we couldn't handle it. And so yain nesech, yain stam, and all of that. Lechem, yeah, nachon. So that's the second one. And then I would even say that there is the third one. Maybe we shouldn't say three categories. Let's say two main categories. Let's say chatnut, which underneath that you have the food, the wine, and all of that, and the closeness to them. And then you have what? The behavior. Says the Meiri, I just want marriage, to get married, intermarriage. So the thing is what? Is basically when you have these two categories. Says the Meiri, I said they are now gdurim b'darkei adat. So you don't need to worry about what? The category of what? Of behavior or business and all of that. But it does not mean that now we are the same. It does not mean that now we are all together. It means what? That we don't need to worry about behavior because the behavior is gone and you have law, but still they are not Am Yisrael. And you, therefore, should continue to keep what? Yain nesech and yain stam and lechem and yain and shemen and all of the other things. You should do what? Oh, chalav is something else. Okay, we're not going to talk about chalav nochri, but the idea is that, says the Meiri, you need to know that it's not a kol mutar lach, a kol sharui lach. It's not like everything is fine. There is obviously some laws that still exist. And then he continues. Ume'ata yu dvarim elu, and therefore, from now on, those things will be meyusharim al libcha, you will have it straight in your heart. ולא נצטרך להשיבם בכל דבר ודבר. אלא שאתה בוחן באיזו אתה מפרשם על האומות הקדומות ובאיזו אתה מפרש על כלל הכל בין ותדע. Here the Meiri, it's one of the first times I found that in a way the Meiri empowers you to make the decision. It's an incredible sentence what he says. He says, תהה אתה בוחן, you should what? You should בוחן, what is בוחן? Test. באיזו אתה מפרשם על האומות הקדומות? What are the things that really were said on the אומות הקדומות, on the ancient nations that they are pagans? And באיזה אתה מפרש על הכלל? And what do you say? That this is for the general ruling for every time that he talks about non-Jews. So, because there are certain things that what we will call שטח אפור, gray area, which is not that clear. Okay? For example, I'll give you an example. That's, Meiri would never think about it. By the way, probably your parents will never even think about it. It's called coffee for 14 shekel in a plastic cup. Okay? There is a reason why Starbucks did not start in the beginning of the 20th century. Okay? Because none of your parents will pay 16 shekels or $8 for a Starbucks coffee when he can get a better coffee at home, right? Sure, נכון? Okay. Now, why am I saying that to you? Today, for example, there is a culture of drinking alcohol, right? And this is business meetings and things like that. But almost every meeting today is what? Is a coffee meeting. That's why coffee places don't sell coffee. They sell what? I did in business school, I did a little bit of a research on Starbucks. I liked Starbucks. To the extent when they saw me, they says, oh, Rabbi's drink is coming. So, and I even invited the barista to a bar mitzvah. She came. Her name was Lakita. So I know a little bit about Starbucks. Part of their success and also part of their failure now is that they don't really sell only coffee. A, they feel they give you a sense of some kind of a status. A. B, they give you an environment. You don't buy coffee. The coffee there is not the best coffee. There are many coffees here in Israel that are much better. Okay?
They failed here in Israel. They were here.
Yeah, but there is a reason for that.
Aroma coffee is much better.
Look, but the thing is, this is not, it's covered, so it's not an advertisement to anyone. I was just somewhere else, so I had to go to have coffee. So the thing is that there is what we call tarbut cafe, a coffee culture. Like with wine, there is coffee. So now we know that why we can't drink with their wine and everything, because it's going to what? To bring closeness. And so coffee, now people, I get many questions now. Rabbi, can I make this my special coffee on Shabbat? Okay, can I program it before Shabbat so it will get the water and the sifter, and then it will kick in, and then it will not do borer, and then, Rabbi, I need my coffee. Okay? And I always try to suggest that cafe names is also good. On Shabbat, ze beseder. Okay, one day, ze beseder. Nothing happened. So the thing is that the question is, and this is a gray area now, is that underneath, quote unquote, the idea of closeness? Or you say whatever was prohibited, and whatever was not prohibited, לא prohibited, gaman. So we have more and more gray areas. And then there are obviously more questions when you go to the modern world, and being in the States, but also here. Rabbi, can I go to a funeral of my best friend, my best partner for life? And the funeral is where? In the church. Rabbi, can I send a gift for Christmas to my partner? Okay? And when it's not Hanukkah. Okay? When Christmas and Hanukkah are not the same. So all those questions obviously.
What are all these answers? I'm not living in America anymore, but I'm just curious.
Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll talk about it. We will talk about it. And you know what? In a way, I think it will be structured in a way that Be'ezrat Hashem, before Hanukkah, we will talk about some of those issues. Yeah.
Since I had a worker that had a father that, I'm curious, because I don't know how to go to
You think I'm going to answer it now? Yes.
What if I wanted to do they called it the secret snowflake instead of secret Santa? Was I allowed to participate?
I'm not answering now personal questions. Yes.
question about the wig and India.
Uh-huh.
That's big. I know it's.
I think you understood.
Why is this an issue then? Why did it come up? Is it Wait, what exactly are you
The question was there that they collected hair, creating wigs from India, and a group from among the OUisrael decided that it needs to be burnt. And why? Because it was worshipped for Avodah Zarah. בסדר. Okay. It was an issue for them.
for a very short time?
Okay. Yes.
I know you're not going to answer, but it's very popular now to have these team building meetings and even overnight meetings. You can get kosher food there. I mean, but it's all work related.
Very good. I mean, the question is, and I will just repeat the question for those who couldn't hear. The entire culture of team building in the companies and everything is that they have what they call seminars for a day, two. And you eat together, you play together, and obviously you go to separate rooms. But the idea is that it's all together in order to create also. So the purpose is gibush, which means get closer to each other. So it's one thing if you are married and you are there with your husband, or even if you are not with your husband or wife, but you are married and you have kids. But if you are a single Jewish boy or a single Jewish girl and you go to a gibush like that, there are many questions that can come up, especially when the purpose is what? Closeness. And you get your kosher food. And sometimes they can make it that it looks like, mamesh, everyone else. Okay, so you don't need to feel that you need to, wrap all this, unwrap this all, yeah. So the thing is, and everyone looks at you like pity. So the thing is what? This is really a main question of what? Of another gray area, because if you look at the purpose of the gibush versus what is asur, but is that asur? So very good. I'm not going to answer each question, but those are the questions that comes up with such a discussion. And what we try to do here is to really create to create those fundamentals or halachic guidelines that yes, as the Meiri says, ata tivchan. You need to be honest with yourself. And it's a little hard sometimes, because obviously we don't want to be so apart, but at the same time, you need to be apart. One of the things that I didn't grow up in America, but a lot of my years were there, and I didn't like baseball either, so I don't have, that's why, because I was not born in America, and also in Memphis there is no baseball. Football, kacha, NBA, basketball I like. So basketball I like. It was even time that I would wake up in the night to watch a little bit. But leave that alone. The thing is that in most stadiums now, stadiums, whatever, you have kosher food. And Jews are very proud of it. Now I can get my hot dog, and there is a minyan, right? Also, section number 9, mincha. And everyone is very proud of it. But at the same time, you need to think for a second and say, is that a good thing for us? We are like everyone else. When it used to be that you went there and you brought your own sandwich, you felt a Jew. Now when you eat the hot dog and the Coke and whatever it is, so on one hand, why not? Why not to allow more kosher establishments, and instead of bringing my sandwich from home, I can get whatever I want and I feel like everyone else. But to feel like everyone else, is that a good thing or not such a great thing? So all those questions can come up, and these are, this is what we will call, it's not halacha. Obviously, there is nothing in halacha against opening up a kosher place that it's supervised in the most treif place and to feed Jews, especially when maybe it even saves some Jews from going to the treif place and they go to the kosher place. Wonderful. But at the same time, when you take all the barriers and there is no uniqueness, too much uniqueness, then there might be a problem. There is always this thing that, when you do a road trip in America, and you go to an exit and you get, obviously, coffee, but then you go to a little marketplace, okay? Everyone else goes there. No one looks, no one, Jews. Where is the OU? Okay? And where is the star K? And this is the meshulash, the triangle K. Is that okay? Is that not okay? Rabbi, is that, and you feel, I'm different. And Sometimes you tell your kids, there is nothing here to buy. Sorry, we'll continue to drive. I think there is some educational lesson that you teach. So, look, in Europe, it's much less than in America. In America, the widespread of kosher food is everywhere, and in Europe, it's a bit hard. It's a bit hard. There are lists and sometimes, even though now it's much better, but it used to be very difficult. Okay. So, yes.
Do you know in America, when we grew up, there were very few hechsherim on, not meat, not talking about meat.
Mm-hmm.
Look, you read the ingredients. If it didn't have gelatin or shortening, you ate it.
Right.
That's what we did.
You know you are
There
recorded, so be careful.
Restaurants were open 24/7. A couple, every Jew with a kippah, not every, many Jews with kippot, ate there all the time, and nobody questioned it. They were dairy restaurants.
Oh, man.
But
But that was before Sharia.
Yeah. So that's one of it was before Hechsherim, and some of it was. Look, I'm not going to give an explanation of societal issues and changes, which might be a good shiur, but it's almost always like that. That when there is more wealth and there is more numbers, when the numbers grow, the chumrot go with them. Today, if you are a religious couple, it will not even cross your mind not to have what? 2 ovens. I'm not talking about 2 dishwashers, 2 microwaves, and 3 kitchens. Okay, 1 for halavi, 1 besari, 1 parve, and 1 for Pesach. So you need to have 4. Even though you don't stay home for Pesach because you go to Florida. But the thing, today it's okay. So the thing is what? Because of wealth and the ability of numbers, so we can, quote unquote, grow the chumrot. But I'm not talking about Rav Moshe Feinstein was in America. He talks about many of the questions are how do I use 1 oven? I'm sure many of you remember your homes with 1 oven, and no one questioned your kashrut. Okay? How come? מה זה how come? A, this is the reality. B, not too many people had 2 ovens. C, to have 1 oven was an accomplishment. And D, why not? If according to halacha you can do it, and you just need to know how to do it, so you can do it. So when you tell people that you can do it, they are like, what? What are you saying? Okay? So there are many, that's A. B, there is one more thing, and Rav Soloveitchik, Chaim Soloveitchik, wrote about it. It's called rupture and something. What? No. There are 3. Something like that. Find it. I don't know. He talks a lot about the change between what he called. I will just call it a Jewish mother community.
Mimetic, when you mime, you pattern after how the parents.
Exactly. Which means, before even women went to work, or even if they did, and it's not trying to describe like an ideal situation, but when you came from a religious home, it was imbued in you, from your mother, from your father. You know what to do. However, when society became more modern and more educated, who did you see in the kitchen? The maid, the helper. And when you came home, your mama probably was not there, and you just put things in the microwave. But you have more knowledge. You probably have more knowledge than the prior generation. You know more. And also today, you can know more by just putting a ChatGPT, okay? And it can create for you whatever you want. But do you feel it? Do you really identify with this emunah? That's a different question. I will tell you one more thing, and that will go back to our discussion. Rav Soloveitchik, not Chaim. Rav Soloveitchik himself, his father, he wrote in Isha Emunah Aboded, in The Lonely Man of Faith, he talks about the Western person, the Western Jew. And he says that many of the Western values basically infiltrated even our religious arena. He says a Western person, a Western mentality is that I need to win. I always win. And I'm not willing to sacrifice too much. I'm willing to what? To dip a little bit my feet where in this pool of religion, but only if it's nice. When it demands a little bit of sacrifice, what do? I take my feet out. It says it doesn't work. And Rav Soloveitchik has this theory about hakrava, sacrifice. Without hakrava, without sacrifice, there is no covenant. So part of the idea is that to make things easier and easier is part. On one hand, you can look at that. It's mamash. It's like a philosophy. You can look at that on one hand to say what? It's wonderful that the Jew can find food everywhere. On the other hand, it takes away what? The hakrava of being a Jew. So, what do? That also relates to one more thing. I might say one more thing before, but it's okay. I'm still a rabbi, so I still always say one more thing. Is the idea of philosophy of heter. Of heter, permission, to get a permission. When we talk about heterim, there's always a question of, on one hand, if it's mutar, or if I can find a way to make it mutar for you, why not? On the other hand, why do you look always for what? For heterim. I will tell you another one. After COVID, for example, the what? It depends for what, that's for sure. And it's also if it sets a pattern in your life or not. But I'll give you one example. COVID. COVID was great.
For what?
For many Jews not to go to shul. Why do I need to stay in shul for 4 hours and to hear this rabbi and the chazan and the Baal Korah that I dislike? Okay? I can have in my own little yard 20 people, of 20 of my best friends. We in an hour and a half we finish, and then we have 2 hours kiddush. And this is wonderful. And even if we don't have 2 hours kiddush, I can empower the teenagers to read, to learn, to be chazanim. Wonderful. I can start whatever I want. I can finish whatever I want. And also, sometimes I can invite the rabbi to come and give Dvar Torah, and then call him again in 8 weeks from now, right? So the thing, and then I don't need to pay dues, right? And no one asked me for pledges, even though this entire kiddush cost me more than my yearly dues, but no one cares because I'm doing it, right? And I'm the macher, and I can do. Now, I portrayed it obviously in a little bit of a negative, but there is a lot of positive. A lot of this minyanim basically revealed that some people who are on the margins in the shul, and they don't do much, when it came to that they are like the 10th man, or they are the 15th man, they start learning, they start davening, they start exploring things that they didn't know that they can do, and it's wonderful. So, in COVID, we had a lot of leniencies. 7 here and 10 there, and there is a wall, yes, if you can see me and you can hear me, and all of that. The mechitzot were kacha. And then you come with your family, so the kids are playing on the playground, and you play, and then you come and you daven, and you go to the playground, and you come back. And then to come back to this building was difficult. And some people would say, why not to continue with the heterim of COVID? And I don't know if you remember, in COVID time, we cut down most of the piyutim that we say during the Chagim, and davening was much shorter, 2.5 hours, and you are done on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. That sounds pretty good. I'm not talking about the Kiddush and Yom Kippur. I'm talking about 2.5 hours of what? Of davening, and you go home. Now, why are you so much in a rush? Like, מה יש לעשות ביום כיפור בבית? But whatever it is, the idea is what? Is can we continue some of those heterim even the COVID is not here? If it's mutar, מה אכפת לך? So this is also the philosophy of heter, of permission. When do you give it? How do you give it? And do you give it as a one-time deal? Or every time it needs to be renewed based on the different circumstances? Now, the same thing, by the way, with chumrot. You know, slippery slope has 2 sides. Chumrot, the stringencies. Okay? When you add another stringency and another stringency, when at the end of the day, you forget what is what? What is really asur and what is really mutar. And especially if those stringencies basically put a burden on people who don't know, or it makes things more expensive when they cannot really afford it, thinking that if it doesn't say A, B, and C, it's not kosher, when it really is kosher. I did not know that water is kitniot. Okay? I don't know. I did not know that water is kitniot. And I did not know that you need to have a chomer nikui לשירותים, what do you call it, cleaning supplies for the toilet that it needs to be kosher for Pesach. I did not know that people are making lechaim on, chomer nikui. Okay, but no, you see people, and I get those questions. Well, like I'm joking with you, but I get those questions before Pesach. Rabbi, should I buy chomer nikui kasher lePesach לשירותים? So whenever I get the question, I say, no, you need to have asla kshera lePesach. No, asla is the toilet. I'm joking. People really think I'm going to say that you need to. So the idea is that with chumrot, sometimes you forget the main issue. And this is also not good. But at the same time, you can hear, look, if you can afford it, why not? I can afford to buy a shirt for 1,000 shekels. So why don't you afford to buy 2 ovens? So you don't need Reb Moshe to wait an hour to cover it. Why do I need to bother? Let's just make it easier for me. Because it's also, in a way, the chumrah make it sometimes easier because I don't need to know. I don't need to know much. The easiest thing for a rabbi to say is what? No, that's... It's okay, but it's better to, it's like a wife says to her husband, if that's what you want to do, do it. You know exactly what it means, right? Okay? So it's like the rabbi says, look, it's okay, but, it's preferable. So then you are like stuck. So it's mutar or asur. What does it mean it's preferable? There are certain times that it says in the halacha, it's preferable. But sometimes there's no preferable. It's just that the rabbi is afraid to say yes or no. Yes?
I remember my Baba koshering her meat. And that was when I first got married, and the butcher asked me, are you going to kosher it, or do you want me to? So I don't know how to do it. And I remember the slats and the blood. But today it would never enter my mind that I would kosher my own meat.
I don't think there's even a YouTube about it. I said I don't think there is even a YouTube to explain that anymore. No one knows. What does it mean? Right? Okay.
But there's another side to that with the hummus, because I think, and Chaim Soloveitchik brought that up, that a lot of the things that parents did and that you learned from the home weren't so accurate. And now with OUisrael and all the books becoming available, they're going more into really what the halachas were, except that maybe over time there were shinuyim that we're not aware of.
It might, but also don't forget, he talks a lot about masoret, imaot ve'avot. And I will tell you, until you put things in practice, you have no clue how it works. You can learn kiddushin and gittin and ktubot, and if you didn't do one chuppah ve'kiddushin, or you were not part of a get, you will make so many mistakes. Because with all due respect to what it says in the Talmud, it's not the common practice that you do in a chuppah. And I was a witness to cases that very scholarly people who could immerse themselves in life in yeshiva, and when they came to do a wedding, the wrong year was on the ketubah, and the order of the brachot and everything else in the chuppah was not exactly what we do. Okay? And then you had to fix it, which was a problem. So the thing is that sometimes you can learn ilchot kashrut, okay? And you think that you know better than your mama, but you never stepped your feet in the kitchen. I'm not talking about eating, I'm talking about cooking and baking. And people don't know. They think they know from the book. And the book is not necessarily the practicality in reality. So don't think that I'm not in favor of growing and learning and knowing more, but you also need to understand you have knowledge, and then there is reality. Every rabbi understands it, because you know as a rabbi that when you come to ask a question, I cannot look at you only with your question. I need to look at you with who you are, where are you coming from, what you are able to tolerate, what you are not, how is that going to lead you in the future, and what are the current circumstances. If as a rabbi you don't have these 5 things, you shouldn't have anything to do with psak. No, thank you. But no, Linda, thank you. I know. I think you are right. Many rabbis, psak, yeah, halachic decision. Meaning, many rabbis just think that there is, and this is the problem, by the way, of online psak. The Google rabbi. The Google rabbi does not know you, okay? And he does not know you. He does not know your circumstances. You asking him a question. Should I do that or should... He have no clue who you are. So therefore, he might give you the halacha, but not necessarily the halacha for you. And yes, it's true. You can ask me a question and you can ask me a question and you will get a different answer. Not because you are unique or special, just because the circumstances are different. Okay? And it might be time, it might be the person, it might be all sorts of things. We know even in, whatever, in the recent war, some of the questions, when you have a miluimnik, okay, a reservist, who was not at home for 2 weeks, and he asked you, can he drive on Shabbat to see his wife, versus a miluimnik that was not at home for 7 weeks, and the only time he can get out from Gaza or Lebanon is that Shabbat, you understand that the 2 weeks versus 7 weeks can be different. It might be that the guy with the 2 weeks has a pregnant woman at home with 5 kids, and the other guy for 7 weeks is a single guy. It also might influence the situation. Okay? There are so many different details that can definitely influence the psak, the halachic decision. Okay, so I think we covered those issues. Let's go back. הגויים והרועים באימה דקה. Oh, page 3. We are on the 3rd page. ממש, second paragraph from the beginning. הגויים והרועים באימה דקה ישראלים, שסתמם מתמידים בגזל ומשוקעים בו, עד שנעשו ככך כפורקים מעליהם עול תורה, אלא שלא מחמת פיקור הם עושים, אלא מחמת ממון, ומכל מקום, כל שבא להם ההיזק מאליו, אין אנו מצווים להשתדל בהצלתם, ואף בזו של גויים צריך אתה לבחון מה שהגדרנו באיזה גוי אומר כן. I will explain in a minute. רצה לומר שבעובדי האלילים נאמר, שלא היו גדורים בדרכי הדתות, ואדרבה כל עבירה וכל כיעור יפה ביניהם, וכבר אמר ראש הפילוסופים, הרגו מי שאין לו דת. הכל מי שהוא מעובדי האלוהות, אף על פי שאינו מכלל הדת, אינו בדין זה חלילה וחס, וכבר ידעת בגר תושב שקיבל על 7 מצוות שאתה מצווה להחיותו. Introduction. There are 2 commandments. One is to, obviously, to be proactive in saving someone's life. And then there is another mitzvah of metzuveh la'achito, that if someone is already in trouble, is in a life-threatening situation, you need to what? You need to try to save him or rescue him or her. Okay, rescue them. However, there are certain people that if they, for example, fell into a pit, you do not violate Shabbat for them, and not only that, you can just walk by and wave and move on. That's called ein metzuveh lehachyoto. You are not obligated to what? To save him or to rescue him. One of them is even Jews. Not only talking about non-Jews, also some Jews. And who are those Jews? Those who what? That porkim me'alehem ol Torah. Which means that they basically they totally dismiss and detach themselves from what? From anything to do with Torah. It's a dangerous definition. Do not apply it for today, please. And do not implement it today. But in the Meiri time, basically he says that even some Jews can be in a status that what? That you're not going to do too much to rescue them. Now, why did I bring it? I brought it in order to show you how much importance the Meiri gives to what? Not only to the observance, to gdurim bedarkei hadat. Because those people are totally immoral people. They are thieves. They are gazlanim. And basically, they show immorality. Therefore, for his guiding principle is what? Is morality, ethics, behaving properly. And if you don't, you lose your status even as a Jew, because it goes both ways. Which means, if a non-Jew behaves properly according durim bedarkei adat, he's being quote unquote elevated to what? To a different status that many of the laws do not apply on him. You have also what? The other side. If a Jew loses his ability to act in a moral code, he loses his what? His status, which is very similar to a Jew who is a mumar. What is a mumar? A Jew converted to Christianity or other religion, mostly Christianity, that he is still a Jew, but if he touched the wine, it's a problem. If he got married with someone, it's only safek kiddushin, which means you can be still a Jew and your status is a bit less than any other Jew. So that's because of a religious, spiritual reason. But the Meir's chidush is what? That even a moral defect or deficiency take you down in a way, lowering your status from a Jew who I will violate Shabbat to save, or I'll do everything in my power to save, to someone that I can just go by and say, see you later. Yeah, Shabbat Shalom. There's also another guy, for example, a moiser. If you see a moser, an extraditor, I know, a guy that goes to the government and says, tell about other Jews, a moiser, okay, same thing. Hamesorot, the people who are telling about other Jews, if they are in a pit, leave them there.